Thanks again very much for joining us here today on The Real Story. The surge in voter registrations this year is most unusual, especially for a non-presidential cycle. There's a lot of interest in various state races, not just for November, but also for the many upcoming primaries just 9 days away.
Now, analysts say election results in Connecticut could hinge on two people that are not on any of the ballots. We're talking about President Trump and our current governor, Daniel Malloy. So joining us right now with his assessment is State Republican Party Chair J.R. Romano. For the record, we also asked Democratic Party Chairman Nick Boletto to join us, but he declined the opportunity. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so you have probably been a very busy man over the last few weeks, and you have a couple more weeks now until the primary.
Yes, we have a couple.
9 more days.
Yes, we have primaries in multiple races, multiple statewide races, congressional races, a few legislative primaries. So there's a lot going on this year.
How are you feeling right now?
I'm glad it's only 9 days away. You know, when you're the party chairman, you kind of have to stay neutral. So it's tough balancing everybody. It's
And you've never had 5 people going for
the governor,
primary for governor.
Right, we have a primary for attorney general, for treasurer, there's a lot. There's a lot of candidates. U.S. Senate, the 5th congressional
What do you think
district.
that means, so many candidates?
I think to me it's inspiring because there's so many people, particularly Republicans, who want to step up and solve the state's problems.
Has this become because of President Trump, do you think?
Well, I think it has more to do with what's happening here in our state. I'm so passionate about my friends and family who live in this state, and I recognize the damage that Democrat policies have done to them. A slow economy, higher taxes, and there's so many Republicans who are willing to step up and really take on the challenge of solving the state's fiscal crisis.
Do you think, though, that President Trump's going to play into any of these races? I mean, people are really, at least the midterm election, people feel like he will.
Well, I think the problem is, here in Connecticut is that everyone needs to remember that Dan Malloy is actually more unpopular than Donald Trump. The Democrats are going to try to make Donald Trump an issue. But I honestly think it's two things. One, it's an admission of failure. Because if the state of Connecticut's economy was thriving, if taxes were low and things were great, they'd be talking about that. They have nothing to talk about. So the only thing that they can do is keep their party loyalists and their party activists enraged in this resist movement, while Republicans are looking to lead the state. They're looking to resist Trump. But they don't give enough credit to the average voter to understand the difference between, say, a state Senate candidate like Adam Greenberg, who literally just wants to make his community better, versus what's happening in Washington, D.C. The Democrats don't give the average family much credit.
There was an issue made in one of the newspapers recently, it might have been the Hartford Courant, about the 5 candidates running for governor. Only one of them said anything about how President Trump was acting toward President Putin in that news conference in Helsinki. And it suggests to many that people are just being careful about talking anything in a negative way about President Trump for fear that this is going to upset voters in Connecticut. Now, I wonder, are Connecticut Republicans are there more of them among Trump supporters now, or does it equal the Republican Party?
Well, I think the problem that you have is the media tends to attack Republicans for everything that happens Donald Trump. He could tweet something and then I get a phone call or they get a phone call. But on the flip side, Democrats don't have that burden. The media doesn't go after them the way that they come after us. So I think that our gubernatorial candidates are very conscious of that. I mean, you have, for example, elected leaders calling for, abolishing ICE. They're calling for open borders. Really extreme things are coming out of the Democratic Party, but the media doesn't hold them to that same standard. And I deal with that on a regular basis, and I think they're very conscious of that.
I mean, obviously, we're talking about national media, local media. We talked about this before. I think that we do talk to our, local politicians about both. You may disagree about that.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying, Fox 61, right. but certainly the editorial board at the Hartford Courant, the New London Day has been horrible in terms of how it communicates and talks. Their editorial board just trashes Republicans. Anything, if you say one positive thing about Trump, they tell you have to resign. So our gubernatorial candidates understand that. And so these are the types of things that Republicans are dealing with that Democrats don't. I mean, you've had Democrats say extreme. Literally, you had a former gubernatorial candidate, Dan Drew, say that it's okay to be openly hostile to me, to stalk me in restaurants, simply because I'm a Trump supporter.
Yeah,
Those are the
that's not
types of
okay.
things that they don't get hold accountable for, but Republicans get asked questions about Helsinki. So
Right.
that's kind of what I mean when I say that
But-
the comments about Trump.
But what people do wonder sometimes, too, is it's so hard to say that. I mean, our president has done things that certainly creates a lot of chatter and a lot of talk, which people are going to ask where people stand on that. Where do you think? Is it unreasonable for a Republican to say, I don't agree with that, but I do agree with that?
Well, but I look at it from, again, I'm going to take it from the local lens. You have elected officials here in Connecticut that have been elected by the people here. For example, the flag controversy in Haddam.
Yeah.
No one's really kind of gone after Ned Lamont about if he agrees with her. She called her entire community fascist and racist.
Which we've been covering extensively.
Yeah, we've been
Absolutely,
covering
but
that.
no one is then called. No one asked Ava Bermudez if she agrees. No one asked Ned Lamont if he agrees. No one asked. No one. So that type of questions don't go towards the Democrats and turn to that broad base.
But don't you think that you guys do the same thing when it comes to Dan Malloy with candidates?
Well, I actually no.
Either party?
I hold candidates accountable to their own record. When, for example, Gail Schlossberg, who happens to be a retiring Democrat, I give her a lot of credit for voting for the Republican budget. We actually tweeted at her, thanking her for her vote. If you stood with Dan Malloy and voted with his policies, yes, we're going to call you out. But what you're hearing from Democrats, and this is what makes me laugh about we need new leadership, and this is what Democrats keep saying, but their policies are exactly the same as Dan Malloy's. Ned Lamont has said he's going to raise taxes. Ava Bermudez said she's going to raise taxes. I mean, these are not new
I didn't hear her
ideas.
specifically say that. Did you hear?
Yeah, she said that we need Walmart needs to pay the
Walmart, yeah.
fair
Oh, right.
share, all this.
Walmart.
I mean but that's the point is that that's not a new idea. That's an
Right.
idea that we've had here for a while.
I have to cut you off, and I'm sorry. I always love these discussions. I really wish Nick had been on the show.
We just got rolling. What do you mean?
No,
We're out
you
of
gotta
time?
Go. Hey, don't forget, if
It's
you
all
missed
right.
something on The Real Story, you can now watch it by going online, fox61.com.
Thanks, JR. And thank you out there for watching this week's edition of The Real Story. We'll be here for you again next week.
Have a great morning.
It is up to us to save this state.